Please open your Bible up to the 15th chapter of John's Gospel. Continuing in this series called The Church, looking at Jesus' vision for what the church was to become as he expressed these things to his disciples on the night before he was crucified. This week we come to the church as a loving community. In the last 2 weeks, I've presided over 2 funerals, and one of the things that has done is to remind me that what really matters most is the love that we share with God and with one another. There are a lot of things that this world has a way of convincing us that we just have to have. A lot of things that we learn to identify as super important or even to identify ourselves with. That doesn't have anything to do with love, doesn't come from love, isn't a part of sharing in God's love or sharing love for other people. And that stuff just doesn't matter like we think it does. And I'm convinced that 1 Corinthians 13 is true. There's a whole lot of stuff that'll pass away, but faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love, these things remain, these things continue. And so we're continuing this series where we're learning, revisiting, I hope, with open hearts, Jesus' vision for the church. We saw the first week that the church is a believing community. That means that our spiritual lives and our life together as a church depends on our faith in Jesus. We are gathered around Jesus, gathered around his presence, following him where he leads, trusting him enough to do what he says, trusting him enough to believe his promises. It means that we as a church are a believing community going where he takes us. Secondly, we see the church as a spirit-filled community. Jesus taught us that he would be present among us spiritually through the gift of his Holy Spirit, and that because the church is filled with the Spirit of Jesus, he is there with us, guiding us, teaching us, correcting us, nurturing us, giving life to us, empowering us within a relationship of love and obedience so that we can be and do all that he envisions for us to be and to do. Last week, we heard Jesus teaching us that the church is a fruitful community with this metaphor of a vine and its branches, and that we're connected to Jesus. You, Christian, we Christians together as a church, we are connected to Jesus in a union that gives life to us, sustains us, and empowers us, again, to be and to do all that we were created to be and to do. This week we come to the church as a loving community, and the big idea in this passage is that the most essential characteristic of the church is love. That being and doing all that Jesus envisions for us amounts to living in the love that Jesus has for us and living out that love toward other people. So let's go to the passage now and read it, and then we'll explore it in detail. We're going to begin in verse 9, chapter 15, verse 9. Just as the Father has loved me, I have also loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be made full. This is my commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that one lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you slaves, for the slave does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends, for all things that I have heard from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you would go and bear fruit, and that your fruit would remain, so that whatever you ask of the Father in my name, he may give to you. This I command you, that you love one another. Please pray with me. And Father, I ask now that you would help me to preach the scriptures faithfully, and that you would give us the grace to receive your word with reverence and humility. In Jesus' name, Amen. Okay, so this passage is pretty simply structured. It's built around two interrelated commands that parallel the Great Commandment. You remember this perhaps, the Great Commandment, when someone asked Jesus, "Teacher, what's the greatest commandment?" He said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength," and the second's like it, "Love your neighbor as yourself." Jesus what he's saying today is essentially that. This is what I want you to do. Except he's reframing it around himself, helping us to see how our relationship with him is an expression of that great commandment. So the first part of the text, verses 9 to 11, focus on living in Jesus' love for us. Live in my love, that's the command. Live or abide, that word abide. Live in my love, that's the command. The second part of the passage is live out my love. Love one another like I've loved you. So let's start by looking at living in Christ's love. Verse 9, now let's read it again. Just as the Father has loved me, I have also loved you. Abide in my love. Some translations will say remain in my love. I like this one, abide in my love, because it helps us to remember that remain can sound impersonal, like remain here, stay in this spot. But the idea is that there's a relationship here. We live together. We dwell together, abide together. Abide there. Live in this relationship of love with me. Okay, that's the idea. So that's the commandment, and the first thing that we see is as Jesus is working out this vision for the church, he's just talked about being a fruitful community. We learn that some kind of bottom line spiritual productivity is not what he meant about being fruitful. Like as though a quota were driving God's redemptive plan and activity. No, a quota is not driving God, and it shouldn't drive us. Let me give you an example. Jesus, earlier in this letter, says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him not perish but have everlasting life." What is driving God's activity? What is driving his fruitfulness, to put it that way? It's one word. Love is driving his activity. Love is driving his fruitfulness. Self-giving. God so loved that he gave. Self-giving, sacrificial love. As the Father has loved me, I have loved you. Jesus has been doing some amazing things. We've seen the kingdom advancing, haven't we? And Jesus can boil all that down and say, you know what's been happening? I've been loving you the way that the Father loves me. So our fruitfulness as a church is directly related. It's a direct outgrowth of the fact that we live in Christ's love and we live out Christ's love. It's about love. Now, history is full of leaders, great and small, who set out to do some great good for the benefit of mankind, but when actual people got in the way, they crushed them. This is not an uncommon thing. Dostoevsky, by the way, captured this well on the lips of one of his characters in The Brothers Karamazov. The character said, "The more I love mankind in general, the less I love people in particular." Might have run across this kind of person before. I think Charles Schulz adapted it for Peanuts, and Charlie Brown said the same thing. I love mankind, the problem is the people, right? So sometimes we don't really know what is wrong with very pious people. In one sense, they seem so godly, yet they don't seem very loving. In one sense, it seems they must know God, for they seem so committed to doing his work. But then, do they really know him that well? I remember one of Shane and Shane's first records. I don't know if this is the first one that he put out or not, but I really appreciate their music. By the way, I think they're doing great work. Love the psalm stuff. I mean, that's a gift to the church. But I remember the song on one of the early records where Shane Bernard said, it was a lament, it was a confession, and he said that my serving you has replaced me knowing you. My serving you has replaced me knowing you. And I want to suggest to you that as Jesus is using his life as the example that they're to follow, and we look at Jesus' life, we don't see any of that. We don't see Jesus' serving of God replacing his knowing of his Father, right? We don't see Jesus' love for mankind resulting in crushing actual people, real people, do we? Instead, what we see are that real people, particular people, felt Jesus' love for them. Individually, personally, a kind word, a healing touch, a needed correction, a word of affirmation, a meal of friendship, a prayer for a need. As the Father has loved me, I have loved you. We see Jesus serving out of this relationship with his Father. He would get up early to get alone so that he could pray, so that he could read the Scripture, so that he could be with his Father. Why? To live in this relationship of love. We see him going to synagogue. We see him gathering around brothers and sisters and worshiping God together. We see him participating in the great feasts where the nation of Israel would remember what God had done. This is Jesus living in the love that God, his Father, has for him. And so as we come to Jesus' vision for the church, we find here that when his vision is reduced to its barest essential, it's about love. It's about living in the love that Jesus has for us and living out that love for others. So Jesus says it, abide in my love. Now, we ask the question, how? How? Well, the next verse and the rest of the passage actually fleshes that out, but in particular, we'll start with the next verse. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. I have a friend who told me years ago, I don't remember what the substance of the conversation was, but I remember what he said. I remember him saying, Edge, the way I see God is he's like always ready to nail me. He's always like, if I get out of line, he's gonna get me. And I don't think that characterizes the way he's a dear brother, a good friend. I don't think that characterizes how he looks at God anymore. But at a time in his life, that's how he looked at God. God is this sort of omniscient inspector. He's like he's got his eye on you, and he never misses anything, and you're always messing up, and he's going to nail you when he catches you, right? And the problem with that is, man, you read a verse like this, and you can't possibly comprehend it when you bring that distorted view of God to it. Oh, this makes perfect sense. Whenever I keep all God's commands, then he'll love me. You see? That's not what Jesus is saying here at all. I'll tell you, use an illustration to make the point. The biggest early influence in my life bringing me to Christ were my grandparents. They literally brought my sisters and I to church from the time we were kids. And I saw a clear, consistent, again, not perfect, but a compelling Christianity in them, experienced love from them, and they shaped me in some ways. One of the things my grandfather taught me, he taught me to tithe. When I was 12, you probably can't get away with this now. I don't know if you can get away with it, but I got a job at a cabinet shop. I swept the floors for years, then did some other things, but I was working when I was 12. And so I had some income coming in, and my grandfather taught me about tithing. So you're supposed to tithe. Well, they also taught me, he taught me about the value of education. I very much felt this expectation, I need to get good grades. I need to go to college. It really matters. My grandfather was a CPA. He had earned his degree and so on. And so he was passing that on to me. There was a definite expectation, definite command. It was definitely not, hey, Justin, if you get good grades, then I will love you. If you go to college, then I'll love you. It was definitely not that, was it? It was not, if you tithe, I'll love you, right? It wasn't that. What was it? You see, the commands, the expectations were his love for me. He knew these things to be good. He knew in the language of the next verse that these would make my joy, these would cause the joy that's in him to be in me, and for my joy to be complete. And so he vocalized, expressed his love in these expectations or commands. Tell you another story, and I have permission from Jonathan. So get ready, bud. You gave me permission. It's on. When he was small enough to where that electrical outlet right there was eye level, when he was hanging out on the ground, he was interested in that. Okay, we had the little plastic deals in there, but you don't want your child messing with it anyway, because what if one's not in there, right, or whatever? Something happened, he gets it out, and so. My command came in this form. I'm watching him, and his hand went out toward it, and I said, Jonathan, no. And the hand came back. Paused. He waited about a second or two, and the hand started going forward again. Jonathan, no. And he paused again, and the hand came back. And the third time, the hand went out, and I said, Jonathan, no. And his little eyes, tears came into his eyes, and he got... In that moment, all of us have been there in Jonathan's place where we felt like that was definitely not love. And yet, from the perspective, from the position, from the vantage point of our Heavenly Father, the commands are expressing the love. I want you to live. I want the joy in me to be in you. That's where this is headed. That's where this is going. And so Jesus says in this text, if you keep my commands, how do I live in your love? When you trust me enough to follow me where I'm leading you, to live into the expectations that I have for you, you will experience the love that I have for you. My joy will be in you. Your joy will be full. Jesus is speaking to his disciples. Again, this is hours before the cross. Saying, you've seen me. This is how you've seen me living. I have been living in my Father's love for me. I have kept his commands. I've kept his word. I've been living in his love. This is what's been happening. This is how I have been all that God, my Father, intended for me to be and do. That's what's been happening. I've been living in his love and living it out, and that's what I want you to do. I want you to live in my love and live it out. And that's going to lead you to a place of joy. Verse 11, I've spoken these things so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be made full. He's leading us toward a joy that can't be taken away. That, by the way, is how you know it's a command that comes from love. It's for us to experience the joy that he knows. Now we come to the next idea. So first, Jesus says, as a church, what we're supposed to be being and doing is living in the love that Jesus has for us. Secondly, we're to be living out the love that he has for us. Verses 12 and 13 begin to develop this. This is my commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that one lay down his life for his friends. Now, I noticed the shift here from commands to commandment, singular, signaling what we've been talking about from the beginning, that when you boil all the commands down, when you boil it all down, what we're supposed to be and do, to its barest essential, it's about love. This is my command, that you love. The way that I loved, I want you to love. And fresh on their minds is the foot washing that's happened a little bit earlier this evening. And the explanation of the significance of that, of Jesus going to the cross where he's going to suffer and he's going to die. He's going to give his life for them so that they could be made whole, so that they could be forgiven and cleansed and experience life everlasting. And so this is on their minds as he's saying, serve one another. Lay down your life for one another. No, greater love has no one than this. They'd seen him, by the way, living this out. Humbly serving people who could do nothing in return for him. Listening to them, valuing them, being with them, giving them time when they were the kind of people that didn't get much time from other people. Honoring them, forgiving them, eating with them, blessing them. Now, if you thought you could misunderstand, if you keep my commands, then you'll abide in my love. If you thought you could misunderstand that, the next one you can definitely misunderstand, right? So I don't know how that hits you. Try this one on with one of your friends today. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No? You want to try that one out? What is happening here, right? And we know it's Jesus, so we know it has to be good, but what in the world is going on with a statement like that? I want to show you. As soon as you see the background, you're going to understand exactly what he's saying and why it makes perfect sense and why it's an incredibly gracious thing to say. To get you to that background, I want to take you back to chapter 13. Go to 13:13. This is right after Jesus has washed his disciples' feet. He says in 13:13, "You call me teacher and Lord." Teacher and Lord. Lord or master, it's the same term, right? A teacher has students. A Lord or a master has servants or slaves, right? You call me that. Why do they call him that? They call him that because of the relationship that he has with them as the rabbi and they're his disciples. This is an institution that was practiced in Jesus' day. So when he calls them to follow him, they adopt this disciple-making institution, this way of learning. And the goal of the disciple is to become like the rabbi that they follow. Whatever he says, you do it. Wherever he goes, you go. Whatever he's teaching you, you memorize. You learn. So you can say the same thing, so you can teach the same thing, so that you can live exactly like your rabbi lives. That's the framework, right? And so he gets down and he's washing people's feet, and Peter's like, whoa, you shouldn't be doing that. Why? Well, because you're the rabbi and I'm the disciple. You're the Lord and I'm the servant. And so you shouldn't be doing this because it's out of order, right? That's the framework, right? Jesus says, I want you to note this, the way that this works, the kind of thing that I'm teaching you. And then down in 13:34, Jesus says, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. There it is. There's the disciple-rabbi, right, relationship happening. You're going to look like me. You're going to live like me. People are going to know you're my disciples because you love the way that I've loved you, right? So now fast forward, come to chapter 14, and Jesus says, not you're my servants, not you're my students, not you're my disciples if you live like I live. You're my friends. You're my friends. So he's taken this institution and he's elevated it to something they had no expectation, because love is not essential to the teacher-student relationship. Love is not essential to the master-servant relationship. Love is essential to the friendship that he says they share. By the way, he, instead of calling them doulos, servant, he calls them philos, friend. You might recognize that from the Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. The idea is that we share love. You are the people that I share love with. When you live in my love, when you live out my love, you show that. So love is essential to friendship. And calling them friends, by the way, is so unexpected, so not what sounds right. That's not really the relationship that the rabbi has with his disciples. It's so unusual that Jesus actually justifies it. He actually argues for it by giving evidence that this is true. You're my friends. In verse 15, he says, no longer do I call you slaves or servants, douloi. For the slave does not know what his master or Lord is doing, but I have called you friends, philoi. For all things that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. Because I know you, I share with you, and you know me, and you know all about me. We have this relationship of knowing and being known. We're friends. We have a friendship. We have love between us. And then in 16, the beginning of 16, I think he's doing the same thing. You didn't choose me, I chose you. You didn't earn being here. You didn't qualify for it. None of that. I wanted to be with you. I chose you. We share this love together. This concept, by the way, is in the Old Testament. Abraham's called a friend of God. Moses, God says, I speak to Moses face to face like a man speaks to his friend. It's a relationship of knowing and being known. And so Jesus is here describing the evidence and the significance of the love relationship with him into which we are called, where love is the mark of the relationship, the most important feature of the relationship that Jesus has with his disciples and that we have with one another is love. Love. So what does this mean for Jesus' vision for the church? The mark of Jesus' disciples, the mark of his church, is that we live in his love and we live out his love. It means the fruitfulness of the church depends on the love within the church. Verse 16, you didn't choose me, I chose you and appointed you that you would go and bear fruit and that your fruit would remain, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give to you. This I command you, that you love one another. The fruitfulness of the church depends on the love within the church. It is our fruitfulness. Living in and living out Christ's love is all the work of the church distilled to its essence. Living in and living out Christ's love. Now, I'd like to conclude by making an attempt at some concrete application. I'm very aware that I don't have an exhaustive list and that you may already have things stirring in your mind. Man, that's great. Go with it. Okay, go with whatever the Lord's showing you as you experience Jesus' teaching on this. But I'm going to offer some suggestions for ways that we might apply what Jesus is saying about the fact that his vision for our church is that we are a loving community. First, it implies that there's a priority on relationships. If at its barest essential, what Jesus wants for us to be and to do is to live in his love and live that out toward one another, then relationships are a priority. Why is that? Because where else can you express and receive love if not in a relationship? You see that? You do a lot of stuff outside of relationships, but giving and receiving love happens in relationships. Relationships are a priority. This is the future of our church. There's no doubt about it. This is the future of our church. This is Jesus' vision for our church at its most essential. At its most essential. A return to the priority of people, of relationships, where we live in and live out the love of Christ. Now, I'm pulling my phone out here because on my, I should have planned this better. Here we go. I'm sure all of you have one that looks something like this, right? And you have this phone, and then you have all these little icons that go to numerous apps, right, that you can use. Now, some pretty amazing apps on here. It still blows my mind, even though I've had this for quite a while, that I have several different apps with hundreds of books. Hundreds of books, right? It's not even hard to hold this. It's just amazing to me that you can, this is our reality. This is our reality. Oh man, I could take a rabbit trail, but I'm not, about Erasmus. But anyway, not going to take that rabbit trail. Where was I going with this? Oh, lots of really great apps that can do lots of wonderful things. But do you know what the one thing is that allows the apps to work? It's the operating system, right? That's why Apple or whoever your phone provider is constantly telling you need to update the operating system, because stuff on your phone won't work without that. In fact, try taking these wonderful apps that you have and you like and running them on your computer from 1998. Doesn't matter what the apps are. No matter how great they are, doesn't matter if the operating system can't support what the apps are designed to do. Now, I'm as sure of this as I am of anything concerning our church. We don't need new apps, better apps, updated apps, so much as we need an operating system where love is the fundamental architecture of all that we do, where relationships are a priority. Church, this is where our attention is most urgently needed. And I would say this, that if we could go forward a year and look back over a year's time, if we did nothing else but came to the conclusion that over that year, that there was a greater depth of relationships within our church, that there was more knowing and being known, more time with one another, more sense of giving and receiving love to one another. If that was the only thing we could say happened over a year's time, I don't think there's one thing we could do that would be better than that in this. I think that's Jesus' vision. That's his idea of what the church is supposed to be and to do. And I don't remember where I have this in my notes, but I want to be sure. I say, oh, it's right here. This is so well set up. Just kidding. Some people would say that sounds really inwardly focused. Right? There's a whole world cut off from Christ out there. That sounds so inwardly focused. Now, I'm going to read something that Michael Green wrote. He wrote a nice commentary on the book of Acts, and then I want to develop it. Because it's a legit concern, right? There's a whole world that needs Christ out there. If we're spending all our time sort of like they used to say with the chairs facing in, and we're all, what about the world? Michael Green, why should God add people to his church until there is something warm and loving for him to add them to? He does not hatch chickens in order to put them into deep freezers. Jesus didn't think that this command would in any way inhibit his purpose of world evangelism in any way. In fact, if you read carefully, you'll realize that the Great Commission, the call to make disciples of all nations, it's fueled by the Great Commandment. It's fueled by living in and living out the love of Christ. So how can we do that, and what's it going to cost? Read a book by Jennifer Morse, who's an economist, wrote a book about 10 years ago called Love and Economics, where she riffed off of something I think that a politician said, I won't name, but she ripped off of the subtitle of the book is, It Takes a Family to Raise a Village. And her point in the book was that there is a value to love, societal value to love, that's irreplaceable. In her book, like a good economist, she asked the question, well, what's it going to cost us? It's a pretty good thing for an economist to ask. What's it going to cost? And she concluded that for love, what it costs mainly, the main cost is time and comfort. Time and comfort. Love costs us the time to be with people, to be with God, to be with one another. Love costs us comfort because while we're with people, knowing and getting known, man, that can be uncomfortable when you start to get to know people and they start to get to know you. Love costs us time and comfort. To love is to be vulnerable, to share oneself, to risk rejection, to risk being underappreciated, being let down, being mistreated, being ignored, being exploited. There are all kinds of risks that come with love. It's no wonder we try to find ways to make disciples without paying the costs of love. It's no wonder we get excited by big events and impressive speakers who seem to be able to get decisions whether or not we love one another. That sounds really good because love is costly. It's no wonder we try to build churches with apps, programs that would make it in Branson or would get us to Disney or as compelling as the concert we went to last night. But here's the thing, why didn't Jesus do this? The reason is because programs don't make disciples. Disciples make disciples. His vision is a web of loving relationships called the church. That's where disciples are made. Now, that's what it costs. What can we do? Again, not exhaustive. Just a few points to consider. One, we can slow down. We can slow down individually and as a church. Slow down for what purpose? Slow down to match the pace of relationships. We can only grow so fast because we can only love so fast. You understand what I'm saying? Are y'all following that? Oh, we can get a huge gathering fast, but you can't love people the way that Christ has loved you fast. It's okay. He's in charge of his church. He'll see it grow. And I guarantee you, we will make disciples through living in and living out his love, not hurrying around that. We have to prioritize people. It's just like us Westerners. We're really good at getting things done. We want to get things done, task. So it's easy to do that in my home. I got a wife and kids that don't need my tasks as much as they need my love. Same in your house. Same in this church. I want to revisit how we gather to foster more knowing and caring in our gatherings. Don't worry, we'll move at the pace of relationships for that one too. I'm not proposing any specific thing right now. I think some of the things that bounce around my head would make you nervous because I want you to know and be known. I want to know you and be. I believe that's Jesus' vision for us. But we'll move at the pace of relationships. But man, what an opportunity this is. We need to know one another. We need to be willing to be known by one another. An invitation to small group is a big deal. An invitation to coffee is a big deal. An invitation to dinner is a big deal. A genuine question about who are you? What's going on in your life? How can I pray with you and for you? That's a big deal. That's Jesus' vision for our church. Small groups cost time and comfort. A couple of years ago, a woman in Melissa's small group told her, "This is the first time I've felt belonging in a group in the church." It's amazing. That's what groups do. We need to be in groups. We need to find the time and lay down the comfort to be in groups. This happens in Awana and CSM, CLI Kids. That's what's happening. You guys are giving your time, sacrificing your comfort, and people are being loved. They're experiencing the love that Christ has for them through you, and disciples are being made. That's what's happening. It's beautiful. I love this meal train thing that happens. I see it happen all the time around here. Somebody's sick or there's a need or whatever that's happening, and like 20 or 30 of you will start making food and schedule it in such a way that there's food in somebody's house. That costs you time. It costs you comfort. It's beautiful. This is Jesus' vision for our church. That's probably enough. We'll end there. But we've been walking through Jesus' vision for his church. Believing community, spirit-filled community, fruitful community. We get down to the barest essential. His vision for us is to live in the love that he has for us and live it out toward other people. And pray with me. Thank you, Father, for this morning, for the opportunity to open your word with these brothers and sisters of mine. Continue having your way in us as we surrender to you. In Jesus' name, amen.